Ka te teiwi, tēnā katoa tātou, I roto I tēnei pō. Tēnā koutou me ngā tini Wairuatanga o te wā. Hoi anō, ko Jay Wilson tēnei, o te pai wao, e mi atu ana, kia ora katoa tātou. Kia ora everybody, Jay Wilson here from Te Pai Waho, Jay's channel, and carrying on number 3 of our sessions on Wairuatanga. And as we wait for everybody to get on, I'll open us up with a karakia and we'll get into it. Mai maranga wakarangona te rangi e tūnei, mai maranga wakarangona te papea takoto ake nei. Mai are wakatupu anuku, mai are wakatupu arangi, e ue nei ki te pau o te pai wao e tūnei. Tenei rā te reo te tuku atu nei ki a koutou, haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Taiki e kia tātou. Taiki e kia tātou I roto I tēnei pō. Kia ora everybody, Jay Wilson here. E mihi ana kia tātou. E tangi ana ki ho tātou mate. E te pau tipua o te ao Maori, e koe, te rangi Māori e moe. Ko te kaupapa nei, ko te Wairuatanga, e anga e pū ana ki ouma I katoa I te motu o tino I te ao. Nō reire e koe e moe, ko koe te ara I atu nā, I te unga, I aitua, I kai koura, nō reira koutou ki koutou, tātou kia tātou, kia ora tātou. So kia ora everybody, Jay Wilson here from Jay's channel, Te Pai Waho. And kia ora Soph. Before we get into things, important to acknowledge the crash in Kaikoura today. Tragic circumstances, and also want to acknowledge Dr. Rose Pere. She was a ruahine in her own right, a tohunga in her own right, and her key expertise and focus was Wairuatanga. And so it's quite cool that discussing Wairuatanga right now and acknowledge our kuia who has passed for her work that she did, not only within her own tribes, but also around the world. Nā reira, e koe, e moe, e oki. Okay rā, so Wairuatanga, and it's Wairuatanga number 3. Our first one was an introduction on Wairuatanga. Our second one last week was around connection to place and how place influences your Wairuatanga. And before I get into number 3, which is about external influences, just a couple of pointers. Te mihinga, kia ora mingas, you asked a question around how do you clear your house daily. And so there are ways that you do that physically. You know, me knocking on the door, you hear that in the wharepuni all the time. And as I know it, that means to wake up the house. Not just physically wake up those that are asleep in the morning, but it's also to awaken the house. And as you awaken the house, you're calling on your ancestors and those ancestors that are within the house to wake up with you as you start your daily karakia. That's one example. Another way is to send intention around the place. And you get into rituals where you're able to do that, and you just do it. When you go into a hotel room, you send that intention around to clear, because you don't know what's happened before you got in there. No different to moving into a new house, going to a new place. My mum always said as a child, you make sure you tāpoi everywhere you go. When you go for a swim in a different place, you make sure you tāpoi and you make sure you karakia. And so, yeah, it was interesting how as a kid, you want to just go and play, and then you got this thing in your head. Oh, mum said I've got to do karakia when I'm in a strange place. So all of those things help and hopefully that gives you a bit of context to mihinga. Selwyn, you asked about the Force. The Force be with you, brother. And you're correct that in different contexts, the Force is sometimes talking about Maori, other times it's talking about Wairua. That's a bigger conversation, but I'll leave it at that for now. Now, let's get into things. So, Wairuatanga number 3, and before I do that, actually, a big shout out to Amy and my nephew Te Rangi. This is their fermented tea, their kombucha, Waikiriko. It's got an award, Producers Award, got a bronze medal. It's bloody yum, and an amazing story. They started off as identifying a way to help through anxiety and mental unwellness and identifying natural remedies. And so they did this as an option. So they're opening up their tap bar this Friday in Hamilton and Frankton, Commerce Street at 5 p.m. We'll be selling from there, and you can take your bottles back for refills at the tap bar. So te rangi, bro, Amy, tēnā korua, tēnā koutou ko ngā tamariki. Big ups to them. Cheers. It's yum. So external influences. What do I mean by this? External influences are the things that come from other cultures and put judgment or can affect the balance of your wairua, and can then also get you to a place where they convince you that your own wairuatanga is bad and or evil. And before I get into this, I want to note that, yes, we will go there. I want to note that I am sharing kōrero as it was passed to me, and I'm not here to challenge or belittle anyone else's faith or beliefs. I'm just putting a perspective out there to provide some kōrero, ko tukuna mai rā kia, that's been passed down to me. So it's easy to jump to the churches straight away, but it's not just churches, it's also different cultures, and how different cultures bring their ways and bring their versions of how they see their world and how they then interpret wairuatanga and or religion. And when we look at it, the classic example for us has been the influence of Christianity on Te Ao Māori. But it's not just Christianity, it's any foreign spiritual beliefs, practices, and or religion that can impact, yeah, I said practices, so yeah, it can mean other things, can be other things as well, that can impact on how you are and then how you communicate with the beings within you. And the beings I'm talking about is taha wairua, taha tinana, and taha hinengaro. So your wairua, your hinengaro, and your tinana. And if I look at the example that's happened with us, I was always taught that matuatama wairua tapu can only do so much. There are times where you have to go to the original source, as were the words said by my elders, and they often said it. Oh no, you've got to go back to the source. And that's why it's important to know both things, both your traditional ways, and if you've adopted another way, to know that as well. If you're finding your way through things and you're wanting to potentially go back, then that's another journey. But it's about how we redefine how we want to express our wairuatanga, and to do it because it's good for us rather than trying to prove a point. I know myself, when I went through my issues with how I was raised, where I got to in the end was there's nothing wrong with the message. What I did have issue with was the things that people have done, or that churches and institutions have done, to ensure that they rule and take over us, and often tell a few porkies along the way to ensure that we believe that their way is the only way. And so these external influences will then start to demonize your traditional ways. The most important tool to have as you deal with wairuatanga is discernment. And when I think about discernment, I always talk about a sieve, the thing that you make the flour light with. Put the flour, put it in, and it lightens the flour to bake your cake. And I talk about discernment as being like a sieve, because the sieve is your chance to work through what is good for you and what isn't good for you. And what you have to do is often clear and calm the mind, clear the heart, so that your puku can be your sieve. And what do I mean by that? Your gut instincts, your intuition, doesn't lie, because it has a register of your joyful moments and your trauma. And so it will always respond in the best way for you. The challenge is that your heart and your head can often get in the way. And so the external influences that come in will say bad, 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 or you can only do some things but not enough, but not too much of that. You have to work out yourself what is good for you. If the external influences or the introduced influences work for you, ka pai. If there's still something missing, then you have to investigate and do more work to find out what are those missing links. And, I've put out a book of karakia, introductory karakia, and they're called tātai, which you sing, because it's a nice, easy way to learn to reconnect to that oro, that traditional vibration, te ia, te o. And as you connect that traditional and ancient vibration, it will take you back to finding your grounding spots, finding the places that will help you ground so that you can clear your mind, clear your heart, and allow your puku to guide you. And so I think it's really important that you use the tools that work for you. But these external influences have told us for too long that our ways can be demonistic, our ways can be ugly, and that's just not the right way, because white is the only way. Even though Jesus Christ himself probably looks like all of our nephews who are brown or darker than brown, who are all got a pretty big thick beard at the moment. And that's what he probably really looked like, because you go to the Middle East and yeah, that's what he would look like. But he's been portrayed as this white fella, which was just a lie in one context. The other context is that, God is portrayed in the way you see him. So if they saw him that way, ka pai, there are some of our people who see Jesus as looking Maori, and that's ka pai too. But the most important thing is we have to know how to separate and then also discern to get you to the right place. I think the other point to note is that the influence of your history can take you so far, and then the karakia associated to your beliefs, if they don't link to your history, then you might need to do a bit more work, especially if the karakia aren't taking you to a calm toe place. And you need to talk to those people that you lean on to help you. And as you do that, they might encourage you to continue to pray in those ways and to just keep doing it. But if it's not working, then you need to ask for help elsewhere as well, so that it can get you to the best place to help you find your peace. So Kati, I'm just going to read a couple of these questions. Okay, so sometimes when you're doing things, there will be a bit of a shock, and you have to understand that shock, and you've got to take it back down to your puku, because the logic brain is always trying to work things out and working it out from how you see the world. And we've got to remember, as Maori, we are extremely Western, whether we like it or not. The world we live in is Western. All of the influences are Western, and even many of our practices in our homes away from the public can also be very Western. Begs the question, then, what is Maori? Well, we've got to work that out. But it can be a shock, and if it is a shock to you, then you've got to find and search for help. And as you find and search for help, there will be a number of shocks to your system that will take you down a road where you have to find the answers that work for you. Because we're all different, and so the answers will be different. There's no cookie cutter for this. There's no cookie cutter. There's no one way is the only way, but there are many ways. Because if you to use the biblical phrase, in my Father's house there are many mansions, just remember there are many doorways and many windows to get in as well. And so just use what works for you to get you to your destination. Nā reira e te iwi. That's a little bit of an overview of Wairuatanga number 3 and the external influences and how they can take you down a good path, but also how they can take you to a path that might not be helpful, which is why you then have to develop how you work through discernment, how you work through your puku to get the answers, rather than just relying on the head and the heart, because they can get very noisy. That's me for the night. Just going to promote the kombucha again. Waikiriko, awesome story to this. They're opening Commerce Street in Frankton at 5 p.m. This Friday. Nā reira, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou katoa. Ei wakakape ake I tēnei kōrero. E kui Rose, e moe, e oki. Aere ki ngā nui o te pō. Ki mi ia te ara I kauria o tūpuna o mātua ki te pō. Aere o te atura. Finally, you can message me on Chase channel to access the book. It's $15 plus postage, and message me. I'm catching up on all of those ones that I've been late with, so sending those out now. Tēnā koutou, turuturo hiti wakamaua kia tīnā, haumia hui e. Tai ki e pōmarire.